How are you guys? I have been in Varanasi for the last several days, and during that time I've been using several lenses, and each and one of them gave me a certain look. So today I want to go and just do sort of a roundup and give you a short explanation about how is it like to use prime lenses versus how is it to use zoom lenses. If someone was watching my channel before, you would get the idea, or you will think that I'm not using zoom lenses at all, that I'm all the time using primes, because I'm always speaking about the benefits of using prime lenses. But the truth is that you can use everything, and prime lenses have their benefits, and zoom lenses have their benefits, especially in Varanasi. Varanasi is one of these places that I do use zoom lenses, because if you look around, there's quite a lot of space. And in many cases, to get close to the people, like with something like 28mm, you will need to get really, really close. And that will draw their attention, and they will get involved in the photograph. And basically you will see them there. So this is a situation that I like to use zoom. The lenses that I used in Varanasi are 28mm, 40mm, and 24-70, all Nikon mount. With the professional grade zoom lenses today, you can get similar quality or even better quality than some of the cheaper primes. So quality is not longer an issue. It's not longer something that I consider when I'm going outside and shooting. For me, actually, more important is weight. If you look at that 24-70mm lens, it's quite big. And walking around with it for the whole day, I don't know how is it about you, but for me, my neck starts hurting. So I would always prefer to just use a small prime, which is lighter. And it's also smaller. It just draws less attention, and you can get closer to people and take photographs from a closer distance without even being noticed. With that lens, I'm almost always noticed. Now let's speak a little bit about how do you shoot with each one of these lenses. If you take a prime lens, you're pushed to explore. You're pushed to explore different angles. When you see a scene and when you approach it with a prime lens, you would usually take multiple shots, and you will adjust the distance by your feet, and you will go a little bit to the left, go a little bit to the right, until you actually get what you want. With a zoom lens, the tendency for most of us is to zoom out and zoom in. Rarely you will see a photographer who would do both, who would try to zoom in, zoom out, and also explore the angles from different sides. That's the curse of the zoom lens. I would usually go with a single lens per session. I would just put one lens on my camera and just shoot with that lens for the whole session. So let's speak about the lenses day by day. I would use the 40mm to capture more environmental-like portraits. I did some layering with it, but the lens is not best for layering. It just doesn't work so well in terms of depth, because you're already on 40mm and you will need to use, I don't know, maybe f16 to get proper depth. And also you're not wide enough, shooting from a relative distance, which doesn't allow you to layer as good as you would do it with the 28mm lens. It's a very good lens for in between, when you don't want to get really, really, really close, but you still want to give the feeling of participant to the image. So I've been doing that a lot. The first several days I would use the 40mm. I love that lens. I started loving that lens more and more. But when I went to the small streets with the 40mm lens, I found myself limited, because the alleys here are very, very narrow. And if you want to actually shoot there, you can't really shoot from one side of the end of the alley to the other. You kind of need to shoot to the depth. And that was quite limiting. So I decided in the mornings to photograph with 40mm in the free spaces and the large areas. And later on to take the 28 and just go into the alleys and see how that works. So after photographing for 40 millimeters for a few days, I really felt that I'm missing some of the wider shots. So I decided to dedicate several days to work with the 28 only. And that was very rewarding. I could layer, I could plan a little bit wider shots. The other benefit of the 40 millimeter was that it was f2. As you know, usually in Varanasi you would go outside and photograph at sunrise time. And during sunrise time, the light is quite low. So even with the f2 aperture, I had to raise my ISO quite a lot. The 28 millimeter on the other hand is 2.8. So in the early hours in the morning, the photographs would be quite dark, or I would just use ISO 6400, which I don't like to use. I usually limit myself to 3200. After photographing with the 2 primes, I started shooting with the 2470. And the 2470 changed my shooting style straight away. I've noticed that I'm leaning more towards using the lens fully zoomed, 50 millimeters, 70 millimeters, and vice versa. And that caused me to work mostly with closed framing, 1 subject, 2 subjects, which is not bad. You're getting quite nice photos like this, but there is almost no complexity. You're just working with simple framing, simple compositions. Again, it's not bad. It's just a different way to work. Actually, it was very good in this kind of situation when you have a lot of people and you need to isolate subjects. So I would use the 70 millimeters and focus on small groups of people. I've noticed that the first days I didn't even try to photograph towards the batting areas, because with 28 millimeters you simply cannot reach there. It's just too far. The short prime lens forces you discipline. You're just forced to do the things the right way. You're forced to compose, you're forced to get closer, you're forced to think about your composition. While with the zoom lens, you're simply zooming in and zooming out and hoping to get something that way. Still, you know, I know the quirks of using a zoom lens, so I did push myself to work on my angles as well. But usually these were closed frames. So which lens you should use when you're taking a journey like that? Why would you take 3 lenses with you? Because each and one of these lenses is giving you an absolutely different feel. You could try to emulate 28 millimeter and 40 millimeters just by using the different distances, but the geometry of the frame changes, the depth of the frame changes, the way the objects are perceived is changing. That background compression is different. Actually, I could absolutely use only 1 lens for everything and just push myself to do whatever I can with that lens, and even get closer to in places that I wouldn't usually get close, and I would just use a zoom lens. After all, lens is a creative choice. You can use wider lenses like 28 to capture more of the scene, to work more with geometry, to include more objects. You can use the 40 millimeter to create sort of environmental portraits, to get a little bit sense of proximity and touch a little bit on the facial emotions of the people. And you would use a zoom lens just to do everything. And today's zoom lenses, there aren't the zoom lenses of the past. That 2470 is sharper than both prime lenses that they have. The results are actually better, but the weight of it is frustrating. No, brother, I don't need magnet.
No?
No. On one hand, you would think that with zoom lens you're missing less shots because you can photograph nearby and you can photograph further away. It is very common to think that zoom lens will give you an edge in terms of being able to photograph scenes that are nearby to you and photograph scenes that are a little bit further away. So you'll be able to zoom in and zoom out and work the scene faster. But you end up just zooming in and zooming out, and you're not exploring the different angles. You're not moving to the side, you're not moving to take a lower angle. You would usually just try to compose from the spot you're standing right now, and that's not good. If you can overcome that, you can definitely use a zoom lens just as a prime, but just use it as a prime. Decide on focal length and work your scene. Decide on focal length and work your scene. Don't just zoom in and zoom out to compose. If you catch yourself that you're zooming in and zooming out to compose, you are not doing it right. Another common thought is that zoom lens is basically saving you on gear. You can use one lens and use it for everything, for portraits or for wide shots, which is true. But if you want to have a properly blurred background on a zoom lens, you would probably need to get the 2.8 versions. And the 2.8 versions, they're more expensive, but they're also heavier. They're more or less 1 kg per lens. So take 1 kg for the lens, take 800, 900 grams for your camera, and together you're carrying about 2 kgs. And if you're outside for 4 or 5 hours during the day, that's significant. Maybe it's not significant when you're 20, but it is significant when you're 40 plus. And there is other tendency. Sometimes photographers decide that they will use primes only, but then instead of photographing with one prime, they're just changing them during the shooting sessions. They're just going between, I don't know, 28 millimeters and 85. At the one moment they want portraits, the other moment they want wider scenes. And that's dust. And that's also distracting. That is also something that is getting you out of the zone, because then you need to look close and you need to look far at the same time and have this compositional planning for both. So you would probably ask, if you want to choose one lens, which one would you choose? Would you take a zoom lens or would you take a prime lens? So there is no real direct answer to that, because every photographer has his own personal preferences. And for me, I would go for weight over flexibility. So I would probably go for the 28 millimeter all the time instead of using a zoom lens or several primes. But since I have them here with me, I just do different rounds, different sessions to get a little bit of different style of images. So yes, my personal favorite would be 28 millimeter, but again, 28 millimeter is not something that is that would be good for everybody. For many people, 28 millimeter would be extremely difficult to compose with, and they would prefer zoom. Actually, I've met someone here that have seen my channel, and we chit-chat for a few minutes. And he said that he's struggling in compositions here in Varanasi, and I was very surprised, because Varanasi is one of these places where you can, I don't know, almost point your camera to any direction and there's a shot there. And if you work on that area a little bit, you will be able to capture interesting images. But then I look at what he's using, and I saw that he's using a zoom lens, a 24-70. So this is something that I would strongly advise against. If you're a beginner, stick to a prime lens for several months, years. That will develop your compositional habits, will make you understand composition naturally. And if you're if you're working with a zoom lens, it is very hard to develop your eye to be able to see in all these different focal lengths at the same time. So if you're going and you're trying to get better and you're at the beginning of your journey, definitely stick to one of the primes, 35 millimeters, 40 millimeters, 28 millimeters. I would start with the 40 and going down. But after that, after you're already experienced in composition and you know how to frame properly, you can use a zoom lens. But always keep in mind that the zoom lens is pushing you, working in a different way, just pushing you to zoom instead of compose. So compose, don't just zoom. But let's say you're on your way out now and you don't know which lens to take. And my criteria would be quite simple. If you're working scenes that are mostly static, that there isn't much happening, go for a prime. If you're working with dynamic scenes, that there are a lot of people and you need to go close and far very quickly, you can definitely decide and use a zoom lens, and that would help you. But again, it will help you to capture more things, but not necessarily help you with the composition. If this is a predictable environment and you don't need to move too fast, definitely a prime. If it's a dynamic environment, consider using zoom. I can never give one sort of advice because every situation is different. But I can also tell you that don't overthink the lens. Think about the scene. and try to use whatever lens you have with you to capture that scene. I think the right mindset is not which lens you're going to use. The right mindset is how you're going to use that lens. Because you can go and photograph every single event and every single travel opportunity with any lens that you get. You can shoot in Varanasi with, I don't know, 200 millimeters and focus on portraits only. There are so many different options. They just give you a different look, but you can photograph everything with anything. So if you look, all these photographs that you see here, they're mostly captured with cheap lenses. Both the 28mm and the 40mm lenses that I'm using, they are around 200 US. They're the cheapest that is, but they're lightweight. And if you have a good story and if you frame it properly, the small details are not as important as you might think. Sharpness is way, way, way overrated today. Even the cheapest lenses that we have today, they can do excellent job in capturing the story. So don't get stuck over that. Beginners should start with primes. You learn composition, you learn how to move around, you learn focal distance, and in general, you learn how to work a scene better. Once you are past that, once you understand how to work composition, once you know how to work a scene properly, then you can use zoom. But you don't use the zoom in a way that to compose with the zoom. You're using the zoom just to get that extra reach or just to get that extra look, but you are still composing and moving around by yourself, and you're exploring the scene from different angles. Don't forget about that. Don't just zoom in and zoom out. That's lazy and that hurts your eye. But if that beginner is overwhelmed and there are too many lens choices and he doesn't really know which one to choose, because you don't know how each lens will look like and how it will be to shoot with each lens. So it's okay to take something like 24-70 that will do it all for you and experience it for a certain amount of time. And later on in your Lightroom, you can take a look and try to understand which focal lengths you're gravitating more towards to and try and work with these more. When it comes to lenses, there are more opinions than it actually matters. You will hear different professionals from different fields of photography that would have their own choice in how to shoot and how to photograph and how to show their view to the world. So the lens is a creative choice. This is something that you choose, you stick for it for a while and you get your results and you understand if it works for you. If it does not work for you, you can move to a different lens. Overall, the gear subject is overtaught in photography. There is more dealing and thinking about which gear to use than how to use that gear. And if you actually spend more time in learning composition or taking a course or workshop or something that will push your photography forward more than a gear, you can benefit from that. We are taught in such a way that we think that if we take a better technological solution, it will fix our photography and it will make our photography better. But the truth is that being limited in the way you can photograph is actually pushing you to be more creative and learn. I'm curious to hear what is your opinion on lenses. What are you using during your travel? What would be your tips for someone who is just beginning? And what did you learn along the way by using different lenses? Let me know in the comments, and I hope this was useful, and see you next time, guys.